Humanity had always been a hopeful species. After centuries of war on their home planet, Earth, they had finally learned the value of peace. They spent many years trying to rebuild their world, reaching out to the stars in hopes of creating alliances and preventing future wars. They joined the Concord of Sentient Worlds, a group made up of many different species across the galaxy. The Concord promised peace, cooperation, and prosperity for all, and Earth was eager to be part of it. Li Yuan, a skilled diplomat, was chosen to represent humanity. He had spent years negotiating with alien races, trying to prove that humans were more than their violent past. He worked alongside Kim Arium, a brilliant strategist who had once been in charge of Earth's military forces. Arium was now a high-ranking ambassador, using her military experience to help guide peaceful negotiations. For years, their work seemed to pay off. Humanity was respected, even admired, by many of the other species in the Concord, but not everyone shared this opinion. The Darnethi, a large insectoid race, were the most vocal in their dislike of humans. They saw the peaceful ways of humanity as weak and unworthy of the power the Concord offered. They believed in strength and dominance, and they made it clear that they saw no need for human involvement in the Concord's affairs. At first, the Darnethi's insults were ignored. Yuan and Arium continued their efforts to keep the peace, believing that the majority of species in the Concord would prevent any serious conflict. But beneath the surface, tensions grew. The Darnethi sought every peace negotiation as a sign of weakness, and their attacks on human colonies became more frequent. The first major clash came when a Darnethi fleet raided a small human colony on Velen 3, a peaceful farming world on the edge of Terran space. The Darnethi wiped out the colony in a brutal attack. The humans who survived were left to tell the story of their destruction. Their screams broadcast across the galaxy for everyone to hear. It was a blow to the heart of the human people. When Li Yuan presented the evidence of the Darnethi raid to the Concord Council, he was met with cold indifference. Some species seemed to believe that the Darnethi's actions were justified, and others dismissed the attack as a minor incident. Humanity was not given the support they needed. Yuan was shocked. How could the Concord, the group that had promised to protect peace, stand by while one of their own committed such a brutal act? He pleaded for action, for justice, but his voice fell on deaf ears. Arium, standing by his side, watched in silence. She knew that the time for diplomacy was over. The humans had been ignored too many times. Back on Earth, President Moon Tak issued a statement that would change the course of history. No more negotiations. We will defend ourselves. The Terran Defense Forces, a powerful military force that had been lying dormant for years, was activated. Humanity was done being passive. They had been pushed too far. If peace could not be achieved through words, then they would have to make their enemies understand through actions. And the galaxy was about to learn just how powerful humanity could be when pushed to the edge. The people of Earth had always believed in peace. They had worked hard to build their future, to learn from their past mistakes. But now, that dream was shattered. The brutal attack on Velen 3 by the Darnethi was the final straw. Humanity could no longer stand by and pretend that peaceful negotiations would solve everything. Li Yuan, the diplomat, returned to Earth after the Concord Council ignored his desperate plea for help. He could not believe what had happened. The Darnethi had destroyed an entire colony, and the leaders of the galaxy had done nothing to stop it. They had allowed a species to suffer for the sake of their own comfort. And now, Earth was on its own. When Yuan stepped off the transport ship, the cold reality of his mission hit him. The human people were angry, heartbroken, and ready for action. There was no time left for talking. President Moon Tak stood at the front of the nation, delivering a speech that would change everything. We have given you peace. We have shown mercy. But now, you will see what happens when you push humanity too far. We will no longer sit back and wait for justice. We will take it for ourselves. The Terran Defense Forces, a powerful military branch that had remained dormant for years, were suddenly on high alert. Every soldier, every officer, and every ship was prepared for war. The weapons they had developed during times of peace now became their only hope for survival. Humanity would fight back, not just for their survival, but to show the universe that they would no longer be disrespected. Kim Ariam, once a top military strategist, stood beside Juan. She had long since abandoned her diplomatic title. The time for talk was over. Ariam had been preparing for this day in secret, knowing that one day humanity would face an enemy that could not be reasoned with. She had been ready to lead, and now the time had come. "Prepare for war," Ariam said in a quiet voice. Her words were calm, but there was an intensity in her eyes. She had seen too much of the galaxy to believe that peace was an option anymore. The Darnethi had made their move. Now, humanity would make theirs. Within hours, the first wave of Terran ships were launched into deep space. Each ship was fitted with the latest human technology, ships that were designed to fight, not negotiate. They were fast, powerful, and relentless. The Darnethi might have thought that humanity was weak, but they would soon learn how wrong they were. The first target was the Darnethi fleet, stationed in the outskirts of human space. It was a bold move, one that shocked the galaxy. No one had expected humanity to respond so quickly, but Ariam's strategy was simple: hit them hard, hit them fast, and show them no mercy. The attack was swift. Terran ships surrounded the Darnethi fleet before they even knew what hit them. There was no warning, no time for the Darnethi to prepare for battle. Humanity had launched a surprise strike, using their advanced AI and weapons to overwhelm the enemy. The Darnethi were caught off guard, and their fleet was quickly destroyed. The message was clear: humans were not to be underestimated. The galaxy had thought of them as weak, as peaceful beings who would never raise a hand in anger. But now, that illusion was shattered. Humanity had delivered a warning that would echo across the stars. As the battle ended, the survivors of the Darnethi fleet were left in stunned silence. They had expected victory, but instead, they faced defeat. And the humans? They didn't even pause to celebrate. They simply moved on, ready for whatever came next. The galaxy had witnessed the first strike, and it was only the beginning. The Darnethi never saw it coming. Their pride had blinded them. They believed that humans were just an insignificant species, soft and weak, always talking about peace. But they had made a deadly mistake. They had underestimated humanity. The first blow came quickly, and it was powerful. Kim Ariam had been planning this operation for months. She knew the Darnethi would expect a slow, drawn-out battle. But Ariam believed in striking hard and fast, with no mercy. She wasn't just a military strategist. She was a warrior at heart, and this was her time to lead. The Terran fleet, under her command, moved swiftly across the stars, like a storm gathering strength. Ships of all sizes, from massive battleships to smaller stealth crafts, were ready for the attack. Each vessel was packed with advanced technology, some of it kept secret until this moment. Humanity had prepared for war, not just to survive, but to win. Lieutenant Park Jisu, a young but fiercely determined officer, led a special team of soldiers who would infiltrate the Darnethi's command center. Jisu had grown up in the heart of Earth's military system. He had trained for this very moment, though he never imagined it would come so soon. His team was skilled, disciplined, and ready to face whatever danger lay ahead. As the Terran fleet entered Darnethi space, they encountered little resistance. The Darnethi had expected the humans to be weak and unorganized, but they quickly learned they were wrong. The humans struck with precision, attacking key command posts and fuel depots. There was no time for the Darnethi to react. Within hours, their infrastructure began to crumble. Jisu's team was among the first to land on the Darnethi homeworld. Their mission was to sabotage the Queen's Hive, the center of their power. It was a dangerous task, but Jisu was ready. He knew the Darnethi wouldn't hesitate to kill anyone who dared challenge them. But he also knew that this was a war for survival. There could be no room for mercy. As his team made their way through the enemy's underground tunnels, They moved with the quiet, deadly efficiency of predators. The Darnethi soldiers were strong, but they were not prepared for the human way of war. Jisu's squad used advanced technology, moving faster and more silently than the Darnethi could ever imagine. They struck without warning, and when they left destruction in their wake. Back in space, the Terran fleet continued its assault. The Darnethi had not expected the humans to be so organized, so ruthless. They had hoped that humanity would hesitate, that they would ask for peace one last time. But instead, the humans delivered a message loud and clear. There would be no more talks. There would be no more negotiations. As the days passed, the Terran forces continued their relentless advance. Darnethi ships were destroyed one by one, their weapons no match for the human firepower. What began as a small raid quickly escalated into a full-scale invasion. The Darnethi could no longer hold their ground. They had made the fatal mistake of thinking that humans were too weak to fight back. Now, they were paying the price. The Queen of the Darnethi, once so proud and confident, watched in horror as her empire crumbled. Her warriors had fought fiercely, but they were no match for the speed and precision of the Terran forces. The Darnethi had once believed that they were the strongest race in the galaxy, but now they were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever seen. The first blow had been struck, and it was only the beginning. The galaxy would soon understand that when humans were pushed to the edge, they would not hesitate. They would strike back with all the fury of a species that had nothing left to lose. The Darnethi had begged for war. Now, they would learn the price of their mistake. The destruction of the Darnethi fleet sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The humans had struck fast and hard, and their message was clear. They would not be treated as weak, and they would not be ignored. The Darnethi, once so proud, were now on the edge of complete defeat. The galaxy watched, stunned and uncertain. Li Huan, the diplomat who had once worked for peace, stood before the Terran Council. He had seen the horrors of war firsthand, and yet he understood why it was necessary. The Darnethi had attacked their colonies and taken lives without any remorse. Peace, it seemed, was no longer an option. The time for mercy had passed. Huan took a deep breath before he spoke. The Darnethi wanted war. We have delivered it. And now, they will learn what it means to face humanity in battle. While Huan addressed the council, Kim Arium stood quietly at his side. She had led the first wave of attacks, and she knew that the battle for the Darnethi homeworld was far from over. But there was something else now, something deeper than just victory. Humanity's reputation had changed forever. No longer would they be seen as naive or weak. The Darnethi had pushed them too far, and now they had answered with everything they had. Arium turned to Huan after the meeting and spoke in a low voice. The galaxy will never be the same again. We've shown them what we are capable of. We've done more than that, Huan replied, his eyes hard. We've shown them who we are. The Darnethi thought they could crush us, but they only awakened a sleeping giant. The Terran fleet continued its relentless advance across Darnethi space, destroying key military bases, communications hubs, and weapon caches. But the attacks were no longer just about winning. They were about sending a message to every species in the galaxy. Humans would not be pushed around. If anyone dared to attack, they would pay the price. A message was sent to the Concord Council, where Li Huan once pleaded for peace. This time, it was different. This time, he didn't ask for help. He didn't beg for mercy. He spoke with cold, calculated resolve. We warned you. Huan's voice echoed across the stars. We gave you the chance to prevent this. You ignored us. And now you will see the full strength of humanity. This is not just about the Darnethi. This is about all of you. The message was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy, carried on the same communications networks that once carried diplomatic talks and peaceful discussions. But now it was a warning that no one could ignore. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were the dominant force. The galaxy would remember this moment. They would remember who delivered the blow that brought the Darnethi to their knees. As the Terran ships moved deeper into enemy territory, the Darnethi began to panic. Their once proud fleets were falling apart, and their leadership was in disarray. Queen Sotha, once so powerful, was now hiding in the shadows, too afraid to face the humans who had dismantled her empire piece by piece. She sent desperate messages to the Concord, pleading for help, but it was too late. The message was out, and it had been received loud and clear. Humanity would not be ignored any longer, and the galaxy would never forget the day when the Darnethi learned that humans did not just survive war, they owned it. The battle for the Darnethi homeworld raged on, but the humans were unstoppable. Every strike, every maneuver, was executed with precision and speed. Under Kim Auriem's command, the Terran fleet became an unstoppable force, sweeping through Darnethi defenses like a storm. The Darnethi, once so proud, now found themselves fighting for their very survival. Auriem had planned every detail of the attack. She knew that the Darnethi would be relentless, but she also knew that humanity had something they did not: the will to fight for survival, no matter the cost. The Terran fleet had been built for this very moment. The ships were fast, the weapons powerful, and the soldiers, like Lieutenant Park Jisu, were fierce. Jisu's Special Forces team had become legends across the galaxy. They moved like shadows, striking Darnethi positions with deadly efficiency. Jisu himself was a young officer, but his skill in battle had already made him one of humanity's brightest stars. He led his team through Darnethi tunnels, through crumbling cities, and into the heart of the enemy's last stronghold. Despite their superior technology and strategy, the Darnethi fought with the desperation of a dying race. They were determined to defend their home, but their attempts were useless. The humans had turned the tide of the war, and now the Darnethi could only watch as their empire crumbled. The galaxy was beginning to take notice. The Terran fleets were everywhere, tearing through the galaxy's once proud defenses. What had begun as a limited operation had now become a full-scale campaign of vengeance, and humanity was winning. Word spread quickly. The once quiet human colonies, once considered small and insignificant, were now the talk of the galaxy. Everyone knew the Terran fleet was coming. Some species started to panic, and others began to prepare for the worst. It wasn't just the Darnethi who feared the humans anymore. It was everyone. Some alien races, once allies of the Darnethi, began to break ranks. They saw the writing on the wall. They realized that humanity wasn't a peaceful species anymore. They had become a force to be reckoned with. Fear spread through the galaxy like wildfire, and many of the once strong alliances of the Concord began to crack under pressure. Auriem's name became a whisper of dread. Her flagship, the Deliverance Asterisk, sailed through space like a harbinger of destruction. No one dared challenge it. The Darnethi learned the hard way that human mercy had limits. Auriem had known all along that the time for diplomacy had passed. The galaxy had forced humanity into a corner, and now there would be no mercy. But it wasn't just Auriem's leadership that had won the war. It was the Terran spirit. Soldiers like Jisu fought with everything they had, knowing that the future of their people was at stake. The Terran Defense Forces had always been known for their strength, but they had never faced anything like this. Their will to survive, their drive to protect their homes, was unmatched. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity would no longer sit idly by. The Darnethi had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The war was far from over, but the tide had already turned. The humans were not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to make a statement, and the galaxy would remember that statement. Humanity had come to war, and they had come to win. The stars would burn with the fire of their vengeance, and no one would be able to ignore them again. As the Terran fleet pushed deeper into Darnethi space, the galaxy began to change. News of the humans' fierce attack spread like wildfire. The once peaceful species who had watched from the sidelines now looked over their shoulders. The Darnethi had been a powerful force, that they were being crushed by the humans. What did this mean for the rest of the galaxy? Would humans turn on them next? The Concord Council convened in a hurry, calling emergency meetings to discuss the sudden shift in power. Species who had once seen humanity as weak now feared what they had become. Diplomatic channels buzzed with frantic messages. Every species now had to rethink their position in the galaxy. And for many, the future seemed uncertain. Li Wan had worked hard for years to build humanity's reputation as a peaceful race. But now he stood in the council chambers, his eyes hard and focused. "We gave you peace," Wan said, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "We tried to warn you. But now, the galaxy will see what happens when you push humanity to the brink." Wan's words hung in the air. The council members, a mixture of alien species, looked uneasy. They had underestimated humanity. They had thought the humans would cower, that they would beg for peace. Instead, they had answered with fire and fury. And now, many were afraid. President Moon Tak watched the situation unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. He had authorized the attacks, knowing that humanity's survival depended on it. But he also knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. The Terran Defense Forces had shattered the image of the peaceful human. Now the galaxy saw them as a powerful, unstoppable force. "We didn't start this war," President Moon said in a private meeting with his top advisors, "but we will end it. And when we do, we will make sure that humanity's place in this galaxy is secure." Back on Earth, the people cheered. The war had united humanity in a way that nothing else had before. The Terran fleet was praised as heroes, and the soldiers became symbols of the human will to survive. The people had endured years of uncertainty, but now they felt strong again. The galaxy might have underestimated them, but now they would understand. Humanity had taken its place among the stars. But not all species in the galaxy were afraid. Some saw the humans rise as an opportunity. The Kural, a proud and ancient species, decided to offer their support to humanity. The Kural had long been known for their advanced technology and military strength. Now, they saw the humans as a powerful ally who could help them achieve even greater dominance in the galaxy. The Kural reached out to Earth, offering to form a new alliance. "We recognize your strength," Kural Ambassador Tharkin said in a message to President Moon. "Together, we can shape the future of the galaxy." However, not all species were as willing to join humanity's cause. The Zelkor, a cold and calculating species, remained wary. They had long viewed the humans as unpredictable, and now they feared what the humans would do next. The Zelkor maintained their distance, watching closely but offering no support. Meanwhile, the Darnethi were crumbling. Their once proud empire was now on the verge of total collapse. Queen Sova, the last of their royal family, had disappeared into the depths of her shattered kingdom. The Darnethi were defeated, and no one knew where their leaders had gone. The humans had delivered a crushing blow, and now the Darnethi were fighting to hold on to what little they had left. The war was far from over, but humanity had already won something that no one could take away: respect. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again, and that was only the beginning. The humans had fought for survival, but now they fought for something much greater: their place in the stars. The war against the Darnethi had reached its most intense phase. The Terran fleet had swept through almost all of their territories, and the Darnethi were now on the brink of complete destruction. However, the humans knew they could not let up. The message they wanted to send was not only about revenge, but about establishing humanity as a force to be respected in the galaxy. It was about showing the universe that humanity was no longer a race that would bend to anyone's will. Kim Arium stood at the helm of the Deliverance Asterisk, her flagship. She had been on the front lines for months, and there was no sign of slowing down. She had seen the horrors of war, but she had also seen how humans could rise from the ashes of destruction. She had led them to victory after victory, but this final battle was different. It wasn't just about defeating the Darnethi. It was about securing humanity's place in the galaxy. "We will finish this," Ariam muttered to herself, looking out at the stars. The Darnethi had forced them into this war, but now, humanity was not going to stop until every last piece of their empire was dismantled. The war had become more than just a fight for survival. It was a message. Park Jisu, who had been leading the special forces, was preparing for one final mission: to capture Queen Sotha, the last leader of the Darnethi. If they could bring her to justice, it would be the end of the Darnethi Empire. Jisu knew the risk involved. Sotha was hiding somewhere deep inside Darnethi space, and getting to her would be dangerous. But it was necessary. "We'll finish this quickly," Jisu said to his team. "We've come too far to back down now." As the team prepared for their mission, the mood on Earth was tense. People waited for news of the final assault, knowing that the end of the war was near. There were celebrations, but there was also fear. What would happen after the war? Would humanity be seen as a new empire? Would other races turn against them? At the same time, President Moon Tak addressed the galaxy in a message broadcast across every corner of space. "The Darnethi chose war," he said calmly, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Now they will see what happens when they face the full might of humanity. We did not want this war, but we will end it on our terms." The Terran fleet moved into the final stretch of Darnethi space, where Queen Sotha was thought to be hiding. The Darnethi had made their last stand here. Their resources were running low, and they were scrambling to defend their final stronghold. But it was too late. Ariam's ships approached the Darnethi capital planet. The skies were filled with fire and explosions as Terran forces engaged the last of the Darnethi defenses. Ariam's fleet was unrelenting. They knew this was the moment they had been fighting for, the moment that would seal humanity's place as a power to be reckoned with. Meanwhile, on the surface of the Darnethi planet, Jisu's team prepared for their dangerous mission. They had tracked Sotha's location to a hidden base deep underground. The team moved swiftly, using every skill they had learned to avoid the Darnethi's last-ditch efforts to fight back. Tension was high as Jisu and his team infiltrated the final defense lines. The entire fate of the war rested on them now. Would they capture the Darnethi Queen? Would this be the moment that ended the war once and for all? In space, Ariam's flagship fired its final shot, crippling the last of the Darnethi defenses. It was a decisive blow, one that marked the end of the Darnethi's reign. The war was over. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson. When humanity was pushed to the edge, they didn't just fight. They conquered. The war was over. The Darnethi were defeated, their empire shattered. Queen Sotha, the last of their royal bloodline, was captured and brought before the Terran Council. The Darnethi, once a mighty force in the galaxy, now knelt before humanity. It was a moment that would be remembered for centuries. On Earth, celebrations erupted. People cheered in the streets, proud of their soldiers, proud of their victory. The Terran fleet had not only won a war, but had secured humanity's place among the stars. But there was more to the victory than just a military conquest. The humans had shown the galaxy that they could fight, and that they could win. Kim Ariam stood on the bridge of the Deliverance looking out at the vast emptiness of space. The war had taken its toll. The faces of those she had lost, the sacrifices made by so many, haunted her. But it was over now, and humanity had emerged victorious. "We've done it," she whispered, her voice filled with quiet relief. "We've secured our future." Her thoughts were interrupted by a message from President Moon Tak. The leader of Earth had been watching from his office, following the final moments of the battle. "Ariam," his voice came through, calm but firm. "You've done what no one thought possible. You've brought peace back to humanity's doorstep. Now, we must decide what comes next." Ariam nodded, even though Moon couldn't see her. "The question now is how we move forward. The galaxy will remember us, but we must decide what kind of place we want to take in it." Across the galaxy, the reactions to humanity's victory were mixed. Some species feared the rise of a new power, while others saw it as a chance to form alliances with the humans. But many were cautious, unsure of what humanity's next steps would be. The Terran fleet had shown no mercy in their campaign, and the other races knew that they could not afford to take the humans lightly. Li Huan, the diplomat who had once worked tirelessly for peace, now found himself at the center of a new mission. Humanity had gained the respect of the galaxy, but it was up to him to ensure that it would be used wisely. He knew that the future would not be easy, but humanity had already proven that they were capable of achieving great things. "We can't let this power go to our heads," Huan said as he spoke with Arium. "We must show the galaxy that we can be strong without becoming tyrants. The Darnethi thought they could control us, but we are not them." Arium agreed, her expression serious. "We need to rebuild. The war is over, but now comes the hardest part. We need to find a way to live in this galaxy with others, to create a future where we don't have to fight for every inch." As the Terran fleet returned to Earth, the people watched in awe. They had seen their military forces fight like never before, and now they saw the potential of what humanity could become. It was clear that the Terran Defense Forces would remain a powerful force, but it was up to the leaders of Earth to decide what role they would play in the greater galaxy. The war with the Darnethi was over, but the road ahead was still uncertain. The galaxy had been changed forever by humanity's rise. The Terrans had shown that they were a force to be reckoned with, and now they had to decide what kind of future they wanted. Would they continue to fight, or would they seek peace in the stars? As Arium looked out at the stars one last time, she knew that the fight was not over. But this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about creating a new future, a future where humanity could live among the stars, not as conquerors, but as equals. The war was over, but the real journey was just beginning.